Chapter 4. We were watching television later that night when the phone rang and Mrs. Kennedy went out to answer it. She talked in the hallway for a few minutes before poking her head back around the door. "Danny," she said, "it's your dad. He wants to talk to you." "Hello," I said, speaking nervously into the receiver. "Hi," said Dad. "Sorry we weren't there when you got home." "It's all right," I said, even though it wasn't. "You've had your dinner?" "Yes." "Good. Then I need you to do something for me." "What?" "You don't mind staying in Mrs. Kennedy's house tonight, do you?" My heart sank. I wanted to be at home. I wanted us all to be at home together. "Why?" I asked. "Where are you?" He paused. "Didn't I say?" "No." "We're at the hospital, Danny," he said quietly. "Your mum's a little off colour. I told you that." I opened my mouth to say something else, but before I could, the phone was taken out of my hands by Mrs. Kennedy, who had appeared beside me without making a sound. "Russell," she said, and she sounded very determined now. "It's Alice again. Listen, there's nothing to worry about. We're all watching television and Danny's going to be absolutely fine here. You and Rachel just take care of yourselves, all right?" There was a pause and I could hear a voice on the other end of the phone, but I couldn't make out the words. Mrs. Kennedy shook her head before speaking again. "I can always take the day off," she said. Another pause. "Well, I can if you need me to," she said. Another pause. "All right then, we'll see you in the morning." She looked in my direction and seemed to make a decision because she turned away from me. "Danny says good night," she said, even though I'd said nothing of the sort. "We'll see you tomorrow. Good night, Russell." She put the phone down and turned back to me. "Listen," she said, reading my mind. "Think of it as an adventure." "But where will I sleep?" I asked her. "In Luke's room," she said. "He has bunk beds." That sounded better. I nodded. "Which one does he sleep in?" I asked. "Which one do you want to sleep in?" she asked me. I thought about it. "The top one," I said. "Then he sleeps in the bottom one," she said, winking at me. "Come on, let's get into the sitting room. My program's coming on." Later that night, Mrs. Kennedy took bedsheets, pillows and a duvet out of a cupboard and made up the top bunk. After that, she took a pair of Luke's pyjamas out of a drawer and gave them to me, and the three of us stared awkwardly at each other for a minute before Mrs. Kennedy took the hint. "I'll be back up in a few minutes to make sure you're all settled in," she said. "I've left a fresh toothbrush in the bathroom, Danny. You'll see it sitting by the sink, still in its wrapper, so you don't have to worry." I went into the bathroom and cleaned my teeth slowly. When I came out, I saw a half-open door to my left and peeped inside. It was Mrs. Kennedy's bedroom. The lights were off, the curtains were open, and the light from the moon was shining through, giving it a sort of brightness that was half dark and half shadows. I knew I shouldn't go inside, but I couldn't help it, so I walked in. Mrs. Kennedy's bed was very big, bigger even than Mum and Dad's. To the right there was a dressing table with so many bottles and lotions on it that I wondered how she knew which was which. I walked towards the window and stared through it, and I could see into my own bedroom on the other side of the fence because my curtains were open. I stared at the place where I'd stood and watched Mrs. Kennedy. I remembered where I'd been standing the night I saw her in her bra. I could see the posters on my bedroom walls and the dirty t-shirt I'd left hanging over the side of my chair. If Mum was home, I thought, that would have been in the laundry by now. "You finished in there?" asked Luke when I came back into the bedroom, and I nodded. He was in his pyjamas now and marched past me towards the bathroom, closing the door behind him, and I pulled my clothes off as quickly as I could and got into the set that Mrs. Kennedy had left for me. When he came back in, I was folding my trousers and shirt neatly and putting them on the back of the chair. I climbed up the ladder into the top bunk and got under the duvet. "Benjamin's an idiot, isn't he?" said Luke. "Mr. Benson?" I asked. "He's all right. He looks like a polar bear." "He shouldn't be here," said Luke. "What right does he have to cook dinner for us anyway? It's not his house. It's my dad's house. When I go to stay with him this summer, I'm going to tell him." I turned over onto my back and looked up at the ceiling and saw that it was covered with hundreds of tiny stars that had been stuck there and glowed in the dark. It was how I imagined sleeping out on the top of a mountain would be. I stretched my arm out to touch them, but my fingers couldn't quite reach. "What's happening at your house?" asked Luke after a few moments. "Nothing," I said. "Of course there is. Tell me." "Nothing," I insisted, wishing he wouldn't ask me about it. He snorted. That's not what I heard, he said. What did you hear? I heard your mum got drunk and knocked someone down and killed him. I sat up in my bed. That's not true, I said. My mum said it. She did? I asked, shocked. Well, no, admitted Luke. She didn't say she killed him, but she said that he was probably going to die. That he's in a coma and there isn't much hope. I heard her saying it before you got here. I lay down again and stared at the stars, feeling sick inside. There was a tap on the door and it opened. Only a little at first and then all the way, and a beam of light came through, followed by Mrs. Kennedy. Are you boys all right? She asked. You have everything you need, Danny? Is Danny staying here tomorrow night? Asked Luke. I don't know, said Mrs. Kennedy. We'll see. Am I? I asked, startled, wondering how long this was going to go on for. Don't worry about it, she said. Get some sleep. We'll know more tomorrow. No, you're not going to stay up talking all night. Do you hear me? It's late. She leaned over the bottom bunk and I could hear her kissing Luke goodnight. Good night, Danny, she said, then, smiling across at me. You know where I am if you need me. It's the second door on the right, said Luke. Oh, he knows, said Mrs. Kennedy. I could see her smiling in the moonlight as she left, and even though it was dark, I could feel my face grow bright red. Luke and I didn't say anything for a long time, and after a while I thought I heard the sound of his breathing change as he rolled over, and I thought that maybe he was asleep. She wasn't drunk, I whispered.